As I stepped inside, the house was hauntingly quiet, the only sound being the gentle ticking of the clock piercing the stillness. I dropped my keys onto the counter, kicked off my shoes, and let out a deep sigh. It had been a long day, and all I craved was to sink into bed. However, as I walked down the hallway, a soft light caught my eye, shining from beneath the guest room door. Uncle Ethan must have dropped by while I was away. He had mentioned needing a place to crash for a few days. Typically, he opted for hotels, but tonight he was here. I hesitated, biting my lip before cautiously pushing the door ajar. There he was, sprawled out on the bed, his tall figure stretched across the neatly made covers, one arm covering his eyes, his chest rising and falling in a slow, rhythmic pattern. A smile crept onto my face as I took in the sight. He looked so serene, so at ease. But what truly drew my attention was his shirt, hiked up to reveal a hint of his toned stomach and the waistband of his jeans. My heart raced as I stood there, captivated. I knew I should retreat and let him rest, but something kept me rooted, an odd attraction urging my fingers to reach out and touch him. Before I knew it, I was moving closer, my breath hitching as I silently navigated around the bed. I was uncertain about what had come over me. Perhaps it was the way the soft light highlighted the defined lines of his jaw, or the lingering scent of his cologne in the air. Maybe it was just fatigue clouding my judgment. Whatever it was, I found myself kneeling beside him, my gaze locked onto his sleeping face. "Uncle Ethan," I whispered, my voice barely a murmur. He didn't stir, his breathing remaining slow and even, his lips slightly parted. I bit my lip, caught in hesitation. If he woke up, what would he think? What would he say? Yet, even that concern wasn't enough to deter me. Slowly, almost cautiously, I reached out, letting my fingertips lightly graze his wrist. The touch was barely there, yet it sent a shiver through my body. My heart raced, and my throat constricted as I watched him intently, half expecting him to awaken. But he lay still, which only emboldened me. I allowed my fingers to glide higher, tracing the length of his forearm, feeling the warmth of his skin and the steady pulse beneath my touch. He shifted slightly. A soft murmur escaped his lips, but he didn't wake. My breath caught in my throat as excitement and fear battled within me. What was I doing? This felt so wrong, yet I couldn't bring myself to stop. Leaning in closer, I kept my eyes fixed on his face, my heart pounding as I pressed a gentle kiss to his hand. His skin was warm beneath my lips, and the faint scent of his cologne sent my head spinning. I felt breathless, dizzy, and yearning for more. "Uncle," I whispered again, my voice trembling. I let my lips trail up his arm, placing delicate kisses along the way. Each touch was subtle, nearly imperceptible, yet it sent my pulse racing and heat pooling low in my stomach. He stirred again, a soft groan rumbling from his chest. For a moment, panic surged, but then he relaxed once more. I exhaled shakily, relief washing over me. Gradually, I kissed higher, moving toward his shoulder. I hesitated just above the collar of his shirt, where the top buttons were undone, exposing the strong lines of his throat and the curve of his collarbone. I swallowed hard, my gaze fixated on that small patch of bare skin. What would it feel like to press my lips there, to trace my tongue along the hollow of his throat? The thought made me shiver, heat flooding my cheeks. This was madness. I shouldn't be doing this. But before I could stop myself, I leaned down and pressed my lips softly against his neck. The sound he made was low, almost like a purr, and I froze, my breath catching in my throat. Then his hand moved, sliding up to cradle the back of my neck. My eyes widened, and my heart raced as I realized he was no longer asleep. "Maya," he murmured, his voice rough and thick with sleep. But there was something else in his tone, something dark and dangerous that made my pulse quicken. What are you doing?" I stammered, my face aflame with embarrassment. I should pull away, apologize, and flee the room, pretending this never happened. But I couldn't move. I felt trapped by the intensity of his gaze and the way his fingers tightened slightly against my skin, anchoring me in place. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" he murmured, his grip firm as he drew me closer, his lips brushing against my ear. You know how long I've wanted this? My breath hitched, shock and confusion flooding my mind. Wanted what? I whispered, my voice barely audible. He let out a low growl, his other hand moving down to grip my waist, pulling me onto the bed beside him. I gasped as my body pressed against his, heat radiating everywhere. We touched you, he breathed. I've wanted you for so long, Maya. He didn't finish his thought. Instead, he leaned in, capturing my mouth in a kiss that left me breathless. It was intense and overwhelming, his lips moving against mine with a hunger that took me by surprise. I moaned softly, my hands gripping his shirt as he pulled me closer, his body solid and warm against mine. Uncle Ethan, I tried to speak, but he didn't let me. His mouth was everywhere, on my lips, my jaw, trailing down the curve of my neck. Each kiss made my head spin. You drive me crazy, you know that, he murmured against my skin, his voice low and rough. His hand slipped to my waist, sliding beneath my sweater, his fingers brushing against my bare skin. I shuddered, instinctively arching my back as he explored, sparks of heat racing through me. Tell me you want this, he whispered, his breath hot against my ear as his fingers trailed higher, grazing over my ribs. Tell me you want me, and I'll stop. The words caught in my throat as my body trembled. Did I want this? Did I want him? My mind felt hazy, but my body knew the answer. Leaning into his touch, I closed my eyes and whispered, I want you. He groaned softly, his grip tightening as he kissed me again, harder this time, more demanding. His hands roamed freely now, lifting my sweater over my head and leaving me bare to his gaze. His eyes darkened as he took me in, a primal hunger burning in them. Beautiful, he murmured, his voice thick with desire. So damn beautiful. Then he was on me again. His mouth trailed down my neck, hands gliding over every curve and inch of exposed skin. I felt adrift, lost in the sensations of his touch, the heat radiating from his lips, and the sound of his low voice murmuring my name. Uncle Ethan, I whispered, and he found my mouth once more, kissing me in a way that felt all-encompassing. Soft morning light streamed through the curtains, enveloping his sleeping form in a warm, golden glow. I gazed at him, my heart racing as the memories of the night replayed in my mind. His strong arm rested possessively around my waist, his body pressed firmly against mine. I could sense the steady rhythm of his breathing, making it feel surreal to be in this moment with him. My uncle. I knew it was wrong. Every logical part of me acknowledged that. Yet, wrapped in his warmth and feeling the rise and fall of his chest, I couldn't bring myself to pull away. Slowly, tentatively, I moved, letting my fingers glide along the line of his jaw, the rough stubble sending delightful shivers through me. I had never truly noticed how striking he was, especially with his strong features softened in sleep, giving him an almost youthful appearance. He stirred slightly, his brow furrowing as if my touch reached him even in his dreams, and I held my breath, frozen in place. But he didn't wake, not yet. My gaze wandered lower, drawn to the curve of his lips, those same lips that had kissed mine mere hours ago, claiming me as his own. A wave of heat washed over me at the thought, and I bit my lip, trailing my fingers down to the hollow of his throat, lightly brushing his collarbone. I yearned to feel him again, to touch him as he had touched me, to explore every inch of him as intimately as he had explored me. My heart raced as I shifted my position, straddling his waist with my knees pressed into the mattress on either side of him. He murmured something in his sleep, his brow furrowing once more, but he still didn't wake, not yet. Leaning in closer, my hair fell around me like a curtain, and I brushed my lips softly against his. The touch was light, almost ethereal, yet it made my heart race. He stirred, his eyes fluttering open with a hint of confusion that quickly melted away when he saw me, replaced by something darker and more intense. Maya, he murmured, his voice gravelly with sleep, a sound that sent shivers racing down my spine. His hands slid up to my hips, gripping me firmly, yet tenderly. What are you doing? I bit my lip, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might burst free from my chest. I want to touch you the way you touched me, I whispered, cutting him off mid-sentence. His gaze deepened, his grip tightening just slightly. You shouldn't, he cautioned in a low voice. I want to. I breathed, leaning down to place soft kisses against his neck just below his ear. I felt him shudder beneath me, his hands moving to my waist, fingers digging into my skin. Please, Uncle Ethan, I whispered. Just let me for a moment. He hesitated, his body tense under mine. Then, with a low, frustrated growl, he flipped us over, pinning me beneath him. His gaze was intense, his breath hot and uneven as he looked down at me. Maya, he whispered, his voice low and dangerous. You have no idea what you're asking for. Yes, I do, I replied, my hand sliding up his chest, feeling the hard muscles beneath his shirt. I know exactly what I want. I want you. Damn it, he hissed softly, his eyes darkening even further. He leaned closer, brushing his lips lightly against mine, teasing me. You're going to be the death of me. Before I could respond, his mouth crashed onto mine again, hot and demanding, his tongue sweeping past my lips in a kiss that left me breathless. I moaned softly, my fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. His hands roamed everywhere, sliding down my sides, slipping beneath my shirt, his fingers grazing my bare skin in a way that made my head spin. I arched under him, craving more, needing more. Please, I whimpered against his mouth, instinctively arching my hips. He murmured, his lips trailing down my neck, nipping gently at my skin. I'll give you what you need, baby. Just be patient. His hand slid lower, tugging my shirt over my head, leaving me bare before him. He leaned back, his gaze sweeping over me, dark and hungry. God, Maya, he murmured, his voice rough with desire. You're perfect. Heat flooded my cheeks, and I bit my lip, my pulse racing. No, I'm not, I whispered. Yes, you are, he insisted fiercely, his lips brushing against mine. You're perfect. So damn perfect. Then he was kissing me again, his mouth moving down over my collarbone, his hands gliding over the curves of my breasts, teasing and tormenting. I traced the line of his jaw, the rough stubble making me shiver. I had never truly acknowledged how handsome he was, how his features softened in sleep, giving him an almost innocent look. He stood slightly, brow furrowing as if he felt my touch, but he didn't wake, not yet. My gaze traveled down, lingering on his lips, those lips that had kissed mine just hours before, igniting a rush of warmth within me. I bit my lip, fingers trailing to his throat, brushing over his collarbone. I want you, I whimpered, my hips moving instinctively. Good girl, he murmured, his mouth trailing down to my stomach. His hands slipped lower, tugging at the waistband of my shorts. Because I want you too, baby, so damn much. Then his fingers were there, stroking lightly, teasingly. I couldn't think, couldn't breathe. His touch was everywhere, sending waves of pleasure through me, making my head spin. Uncle Ethan, I whispered as his lips brushed my skin. Just let me love you, Maya. Let me make you mine. And I did. I let him touch me, kiss me, hold me. I surrendered to him completely, utterly, in every way that mattered. As we lay entwined, our bodies pressed together, I realized something profound. This was more than just forbidden desire. This was love. Pure, intense, undeniable love. And regardless of what happened next, no matter how the world viewed it, I knew one thing for certain. I was never letting him go.